Judge ready?
I'm ready.
Opponent ready? Hello, my name is Vincent PRO, and I am debating the pro side of why the federal minimum wage should be raised to $15. This debate should be decided using cost-benefit analysis, meaning that the team that provides the greater balance of benefits and employees and government taxes and revenues and employers outweigh any costs presented by my opponent. My first contention is benefits for workers. An increase in minimum wage allows workers to improve their lives and their families' lives. Subpoint A, housing. A worker can rent/buy a larger space to prevent living in cramped conditions. My subpoint B is health. Workers could also spend their money on better quality food, leading to a healthier diet and health insurance. This matters because workers will be healthier and well rested. My second contention is benefits to the community. Bigger paychecks mean more money would be earned by the government on payroll taxes, leading to funding going into things such as education and public works, plus government relief funds such as Social Security and Medicare. This matters because this will create better communication for all Americans. This is one of the clear benefits to raising the minimum wage, which is helping our team in the debate. My third contention is benefits to employers. Subpoint A, lower employee turnover. A University of California at Berkeley study found that when the minimum wage was increased by 10%, employees' turnover decreased by 2%. Subpoint B, higher productivity. The same study found that 53% of business owners believe that with a higher minimum wage, businesses would benefit from lower employee turnover and increased productivity. Businesses will profit when the minimum wage is raised. This is clear to employees and should be accounted for during CBA. To recap, my first contention is benefit to workers in terms of improved housing and health. My second contention is benefit to the community through tax revenues allowing the funding of programs and productivity. And my third is benefits to employers through lower employee turnover and higher productivity. We look at this case using CBA. The pro has demonstrated greater benefits to employees, community, and employers. Thank you for your time.
Judges ready? Opponent ready?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm going to be arguing the con side of increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I believe this debate should be decided by cost-benefit analysis, meaning that the debate should be decided by whether or not increasing the minimum wage would have better benefits versus the downsides of the cost, which I'll be telling you in my debate. My first contention is the businesses. An increase in the minimum wage would force many businesses to close because they would not be able to afford to pay the increase in the minimum wage. According to a 2013 Gallup poll, an increase in the minimum wage would hurt 66% of all business owners. And according to Jamie Richardson, the vice president of White Castle, they stated that they would have to close almost half of their stores and lay off thousands of workers, which would severely hurt the economy and the jobs. My second contention is the economy. Increasing the minimum wage would make it so that stores would have to sell products for more, and there would be a ripple effect because people making more money, all the products would increase, making it there'd be no importance to increasing the minimum wage. According to a Purdue study, 2015 study, the prices would increase and the size of the products would decrease. Also, according to an NBC study in Oakland, California, increasing the minimum wage to $12.25 an hour would increase the prices of all products by 10 to 20%, which many people said they would not be able to afford. My third and final contention is the young adults. Subpoint A, companies. Most companies won't be willing to pay $15 an hour to young, inexperienced teens, and it would make them hard to gain jobs. According to a research study by Matthew Rosso, PhD, he said that 50% of minimum wage workers are aged 16 to 24, but only 13% of the workforce as a whole that companies wouldn't be willing to pay them. My subpoint B is the school. If people were making $15 an hour from minimum wage, they wouldn't be as willing to get things like a college degree because they wouldn't see it as necessary, considering they would already be making a high amount of money. To recap, I believe this debate should be decided by cost-benefit analysis, with my first contention as businesses, second contention as economy, and third contention as the young adults. An increase in minimum wage would have a devastating impact on the businesses, the economy, prices, and the young adults to gain a job. Thank you.
Judge, ready?
I'm ready.
Part ready?
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree that reducing employee turnover is good for businesses?
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree that having employees in a good financial state is extremely important?
Yes.
Wouldn't you? How do you respond to the fact that having more money in the education program helps educate workers?
Well, according to my studies, they wouldn't need education because they would be making such high amount of money just from no education or no degree. And how would an increase in the minimum wage put more money into education?
Through payroll taxes on the government. Were you aware that a 2014 University of California at Berkeley study found that raising the minimum wage leads to greater worker productivity?
Okay. Is there a question in there?
Yes, were you aware?
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Could you please repeat your sources on both of your first contingent, subpoint A and subpoint B?
I don't have the evidence for that, but I believe it came from procon.org.
Thank you. Could you please repeat your third contention, subpoint B?
Higher productivity.
Could you repeat it in the whole?
Oh. The same study found that 53% of business owners believe that with a higher minimum wage, businesses would benefit from lower employee turnover, increased productivity, and customer satisfaction.
Thank you. And for your first contention, subpoint B, could you please repeat it?
Subpoint B, health. Workers would also be able to spend their money on better quality food, leading to a healthier diet.
Wouldn't you agree that if the minimum wage is increased, that the foods and many of the other things would also cost more money?
Yes.
Okay, because according to my studies, it would make everything cost more money because when you're increasing the minimum wage, you would have to do more. So, what do you think about that?
Yes, that's true.
And wouldn't you also agree that you stated that housing, people would be able to buy better houses, but since people were making more money, they would sell their housings and apartments for also more money, and making it so there wouldn't be as much of an effect.
That just earns more money for the employee, which is good.
Thank you.
Judge, ready?
I'm ready.
Alright. For your first contention, businesses, you said closing according to a Gallup poll, 50% of the economy would be affected. This, on my studies, a study on QuickBook, forced small companies to close. Only the hospitality, food services, and retail industries will be affected by a minimum wage hike because the other industries pay more. According to QuickBooks, these three industries employ 13 million people in small businesses, or 10% of private employment. This is a small portion of people that could be affected by a minimum wage hike. On your second contention, economy, you're talking about consumers and how they could be affected. Increased consumer prices, though. Consumers may want to support businesses that pay more than the minimum wage by paying the higher prices, and if a company has to retrain a new employee every time an employee leaves, then it is more expensive to train a new employee than to pay a higher wage and keep the first employee. It also might not increase prices as much as you think because of the decreased employee turnover. And finally, your young adults on your contention number 3. This prevents teenagers and lower education workers from starting their careers. According to the NPR, it does not prevent teenagers and lower education workers from starting their careers. It increases the amount of jobs accordingly to studies conducted by economist David Card. That will conclude my time. Thank you very much.
I'll take 2 minutes of prep time.
Judges ready?
I'm ready.
Opponent ready?
Yes.
So I would just like to tell you how I believe this debate should be decided, which is cost-benefit analysis, meaning that the balance of the cost of increasing the minimum wage are more severe than the benefits. My opponent used the same how the debate should be decided, but I believe my case works better for that because I have painted a picture that's clear as to how the severe costs of increasing the minimum wage. My opponent's first contention, subpoint A and B, was that workers would live better lives because they would have better housing and better health. But I stated in my contentions how that all those prices would have to increase and it would balance each other out and there would be no importance of increasing the minimum wage. Their second contention about the community would have better education, but increasing the minimum wage would be hard on the communities because you're having to make them pay so much more money and businesses would have to close down, and which would make businesses close down in a town. You wouldn't have as much. Their third contention, they stated how employers, 53% of employers would be benefited, but in my studies I showed how over 60% would not be able to. So for a quick recap of my case, my first contention was the businesses, how an increase in the minimum wage would force these small businesses that are just trying to get on their feet to have to close down because they can't afford it. My second contention was the economy, how an increase in the minimum wage would make stores have to increase all their prices because just to balance out the costs of the increasing the minimum wage. My third contention was how it would be hard on the younger generation to get jobs because they wouldn't be able to, businesses wouldn't be willing to pay $15 an hour for inexperienced people. And since how I believe this debate should be decided with cost-benefit analysis, I have tried to paint a clear picture on my case as to how there would be severe costs to increasing the minimum wage, and I believe by that standpoint I'm winning this debate. Thank you.
Are you ready? Yes, sir. Cost-benefit analysis ties into the resolution the federal minimum wage should be raised to $15 an hour. Cost-benefit analysis would best be explained by a greater balance of benefits for employees, government tax revenues, and employers outweigh any cost presented by my opponent. To recap my contentions, my first contention is benefits to workers in terms of improved housing and health. My second contention is benefits to the community through tax revenues allowing the funding of programs that help everyone. And my third is benefits to employers through lower employee turnover and higher productivity. My first voter is that my opponent agreed to all of my points during cross-ex, which is a point that flows to my team. My second and final voter is, through the lens of CBA, there is more benefits to workers, such as improved housing and health for employees, more money in the education and public works for the community, and employee turnover and higher productivity for employers outweigh any cost presented by my opponent. Thank you for your time.
Judges ready?
I'm ready.
Opponents ready? So I would just like to go over how I believe this debate should be decided, which is cost-benefit analysis. I tried to highlight all the points of the costs of increasing the minimum wage. In my final speech, I will tell you how I believe my side has won this debate. For a recap of my contentions, my first contention was the businesses and how an increase in the minimum wage would force these small businesses to close. For my second contention of the economy, how an increase in the minimum wage would make stores have to sell for more. And my third contention was how the young adults would have trouble getting jobs because they're inexperienced. I would like to weigh some of my points, how in every single one of my contentions I tried to give a research study, and my opponent did not give any of those in his first contention, meaning that I believe my first contention is stronger and that those points should flow to me. My first voter is the fact that my opponent gave new information in his rebuttal. I do not remember hearing that in their case, and it was new studies. My second voter was there was no evidence on their first contention and their second contention, and that their first contention was whole theoretical as that it would happen. My third and final contention is the framework, how my cost-benefit analysis framework, throughout my entire case, I have tried to highlight and paint a clear picture as to why the increase in minimum wage would have more severe costs than benefits with my businesses, economy, and young adults. And that's why I believe that I should win this debate. Thank you very much.
Particularly this last one, it was a close round. I ultimately decided that I was going to vote for the pro team, and the reason that I voted for the pro team was it comes down to that weighing mechanism of cost-benefit analysis. Now, in that case, it's the job of the con to provide the cons of doing so, and the job of the pro to provide the benefits of doing so, of basically running the plan. The plan being, increasing the minimum wage $15 an hour. And I bought the rebuttals in that middle speech of, and I think those rebuttals were really what won the case in terms of the benefits of doing it still kind of stood throughout the round, but the pro team was able to knock out some of those costs associated with it in that middle speech. Now, if I go speech by speech, the first speech for pro, you did a good job impacting out your arguments and telling me why it matters. I think that you picked up some of the feedback that I gave you in the first round of, okay, well, always tell me, like, why does this matter, why does this matter, why does this matter? And you built that into your speech, and I think you did a great job of doing that and impacting it up to your cost-benefit analysis. Jonathan, I think you also, once again, did a good job with case construction, good job with tagging, and then throughout the entire round, you were impacting back up to that cost-benefit analysis. So, like, you were doing the mechanics of what you needed to do. One thing that I will say, if your framework is cost-benefit analysis and their framework is cost-benefit analysis, in that first speech, you can save yourself a little bit of time by saying, I agree with the framework of cost-benefit analysis. I think it's a great way to weigh this round. I'm going to tell you why. And then you go through your contentions and then spend time, even more time, impacting them back out to the cost-benefit analysis. And that would help you out in the future. In that middle speech, I think you had good rebuttals. I think that was very well done. I'd be a little hesitant for introducing new evidence in those rebuttals. That would depend entirely upon the format of the debate. In most formats, if it's a rebuttal speech, no new evidence in a rebuttal, talk to your coach about that one. But I think that some of the other arguments that you made there without evidence behind them were good arguments to be made. And I think those knocked out some of the costs associated with running the plan. Jonathan, once again, you did a great job of bringing your case through every single speech. Whether it was your rebuttal speech or your summary speech, you did a great job of okay, well, remember this contention that I had, remember why it matters. I think you did a great job of that throughout. And definitely continue to do that in future debates. I think you also had some pretty good arguments to be made in that rebuttal, and continuing to impact out of the weighing mechanism. And then finally, David, I think you could have spent some more time in that final speech impacting out why certain arguments mattered, and those voters as well. I don't really buy your first voter of him agreeing to all the points during cross-examination. If you're gonna say that he did, like, point out specific things that he said that meant that he agreed to your contentions as they were run. That way it just makes it very clear for me as a judge, okay, when he said yes to this question that you asked, that question was essentially like a hidden version of your contention. Because like, I know where you were going with it, but just make that very clear to your judge. I think it was a good move, but just make sure all the pieces are in place. And then finally, I think you did a great job with voters as well. A lot of the voters that you had, I would say, particularly your first or your second one, would have made a great rebuttal for that middle speech. If that had been in the middle speech, I think I probably would have voted for the con. But wonderful job to the pro team, wonderful job to the con team. It was a really good debate.